Good to be here. Excited very much. So the QR code that's on here, it's throughout the slides, so it's later on as well. It links to videos of this, talks I've done, handouts, other resources, just trying to give you as much as I can give you. Because I know a lot of us are in the trenches, parent, grandparent, friends, family, loved ones that are struggling in lots of areas. So of all the topics we could talk about, we could talk about gender and sexuality. We're going to look at that here in a minute. Kind of to start, I'm just going to share you a story of kind of what starts shaping me. I'm a therapist, been a therapist for 25 years, counselor, and I have 3 experiments. That's what I call my children. They're 3 experiments. They get talked about a lot. These are my 2 boys. I can't remember what year this was, 2017, 18. We're skiing at Hoodoo, and it was the last day of the season, April. And nice day, and my son goes by this girl that's wearing like a sports bra. He's like, why is she wearing that? And the guy goes, because she's hot. And he's like confused. Which kind? And so then we keep going, and we're skiing, and it's a hot day, and there's people doing really crazy stuff. And then this girl comes flying down the hill topless, a quite large young lady. And I knew he was going right towards my older son. I'm like, oh, shoot, this is going to be fun. Luckily, Blaze, the middle guy, would have been like pointing and laughing, so he was not there. So I chase after Alex. I get to the bottom, and I'm like, you okay? He goes, no. I was like, first time? He goes, yes. So I was like, how was it? I'm not answering that. Because one of the questions I had was, someone's going to show my kids pornography somewhere, or they're going to discover it somewhere. Can I show them? No. But how do we have these conversations when so much happens in the dark and in secret? How can I expose? Well, that led to a great, probably 100 conversations of so what do you do? What was her story? Why was she doing that? All these kinds of things. So later, actually about the same year, I took my kids to this movie, Ready Player One. Which, by the way, you probably want to preview movies before you go take your kids to a movie. So we go to this movie. I have all 3 of my kids. My little girl's quite little at the time. And it was interesting because there's one scene where they all had 3 different reactions. My oldest son was embarrassed. And it was this scene here with the girl in the red dress. They're in the virtual world, so they're in fake world, wearing masks and stuff. And my oldest son was embarrassed to talk about it because he saw this girl and she's wearing this tight dress, and it's like, this is awkward, sitting next to my dad. My middle son could not get over the last scene where the guy gets kicked in the crotch and he's wearing the suit, and he just thought that was the most hilarious thing in the world, which says a lot about him. But my daughter was, wow, what a beautiful dress. We all see different things and hear different things and feel different things. And the thing is this is bombarding us everywhere all the time and hitting us in different ways. We don't know. And if you think of my 3 experiments, it hits them all in 3 different ways, plus my wife and I. Hey, Haley. Approximately 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 10 boys aged 13 to 17 report sharing their own nudes, according to a 2020 report. Most of us, we can't fathom this. This is happening more and more and more regularly. It's just a normal part of so many kids. A number of years ago, I had a young lady at Corbin actually share a nude with someone who started blackmailing her. And all of her friends actually said, keep sending stuff. You don't want him to actually share it online. And luckily, she didn't do what her friends said. She came to me, and we went to the police station, and we filed a report and did all the things, and nothing bad happened, but it was like sad to me her friends didn't really know what to say or do. This is a reality, and the truth is he could have released it. He could have done all sorts of things. We don't know. But where do we start with this conversation? This is kind of, if you think of our kids again, and we love them, what I'm seeing with parents is I love my children, but this is an area I just can't touch with a 10-foot pole. And so when I go speak to middle school, high schools, and I talk about this subject, I start in one place. And it's, okay, what does Scripture say? How did God design us? One of the questions I ask in my human sexuality class, how did God design us? Why did he make you chemically that way, neurologically that way, physically that way? Because none of it's a mistake. Even the hard parts, even the part that are broken, and we struggle with mental health or physical health stuff, even that. So we go to the beginning. There's a created order. That God created man, and he created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. There's a design from the beginning of how we were created. So we have to start there. But one of the coolest things that we kind of forget about is prior to the fall, there was something about the way the world was designed prior to the fall. It's a word that you and I may not like, but we need to learn to like. And it's actually the word work. As in, work was a part of pre-fall, which I think is a really interesting and important part of the story, that we were actually, Adam worked the garden in perfect fellowship with God. And what I don't understand is how he could be in perfect fellowship with God and actually have the audacity to say, and I need something more. Like, that's so weird and so wild. And so God goes, okay, I'm going to put you through this ringer of naming all the animals. Not like me, 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 not like me. And then he made woman. The Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. There's a design, there's an order to all of this. And what do we see everywhere? It's disorder. Students I know that actually get married and their friends from other parts of the country, a lot of times Portland, Seattle, are like, why would you ever settle for such an antiquated thing? And they disown them, they cut themselves off because how dare you settle for marriage, traditional marriage, which is sad. But out of this design of woman and man, what's next? Well, we have marriage. That's why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. There's again an order here. Now, the sad part that I have to really emphasize even here, which has been not new in our world, but new in conversation for many of us, is this means two sexually different people. That is part of the design. There's no marriage between two men or two women. That is not how it's designed. There will never be anything united in heaven, whatever they sign a contract on earth. There's a design there. And so if you think of that verse, or the next verse, Adam and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. You and I will never know what that looks like or feels like. We don't know what that's like to not feel shame. We have glimpses of it. We have moments of maybe great intimacy, but it's still nothing compared to what we were designed for, which is where we will be one day. Now, in 2023, there was a really good book that kind of helped explain some of this that I'm going to give you a few suggestions throughout, but this one's from Preston Sprinkle. Does the Bible support same-sex marriage? And part of what he does in here, he goes through 21 conversations from a historically Christian view. He looks at the argument for why it's a yes and explains, here's my agreement with what you say in part, and then here's why you're wrong. Here's why I support the traditional view of marriage. Many of us, even just this book right here, you go, wow, I haven't thought of that, I haven't thought of that, I haven't thought of that. And part of what we need to be doing is developing a sense of defense. Why do you believe what you believe? That a lot of Christians even know that the Bible talks about polygamy and polyamory and all sorts of weird, messy stuff, and then we can't go, but what does it say in terms of design for marriage? We need to know what we believe, which is why I study more now than I studied 20-something years ago. It's just constantly learning. And then out of marriage, yay, the best day of my life, 22 years ago. That's my bride and I. And then what happens when you do that and what's supposed to be next, which doesn't always happen. Not everyone ends up having children or being able to have children, which is part of, again, the fallen world, is you start creating little monsters. This is our church picture. This is about the best we could do. A number of years ago. And then those little monsters grow, those little crazies that they only take up the part that you don't want them to take up. And then you're like, dang it, I thought you would get all the good stuff. I thought I led well. No, they pick it all up. And so they grow. We have adventures together. And that's one of the beautiful things, part of life. Because part of the created order is man, woman, marriage, and then children, procreation. That's part of the order. Yet we have a world and society that's not getting married and doesn't want children. That's starting to change. Some data I've seen of Gen Z and Alpha is saying that they're rebelling against their millennial parents and they want to have a marriage and have kids. Because we just keep going in circles. And so like, yay, rebel that way. I love that. There's a design of what we ought to do and be, but there's also those of us, which is all of us in this room, that rebel against that. It's just in different ways, different parts of the story. And so then one of the things is, like for my wife and I, is we thought we couldn't have kids. So when my wife told me we were pregnant, I cried like a 2-year-old. I could not believe it. She was mad because she had surrendered in her heart that she would not be able to, and that we were able to have 3 beautiful, again, experiments. And then they keep growing up. This is them at Canyon View, 2 of them. This is the more recent. My oldest just joined the Army National Guard in Colorado. And it's so wild to think about who they are and the imprint we get to make, but they're not ours. Like my wife and I are in that new season and realizing in 3 years it's just us. I haven't really thought about that season, and it's kind of exciting, but also it's like, wow, this is going to be different. So I hope I still like her. Just kidding. Which I do, so it's great. But that's a huge part of the problem. When you get to that season, you don't realize that this is going to be quieter. And that's a struggle, but these are our pride and joy, if you will. That's when I met my wife, I was walking with a cane and was told by doctors I would never work, that I would never do a lot of the things I do, which is part of why I ride a Harley and go backpacking and a lot of the stuff that we do. Just spent this weekend doing an Eagle project at Canyon View with our Boy Scout troop and camping out there. And it's just amazing to be able to do stuff. And I'm reminded all the time of what I was told in my fight to rewrite that story. And that's the story for the story for so many people, where they're aiming somewhere and God doesn't open this door. Whether it's children or no children, whether it's marriage or not marriage. And that's an important thing. Well, part of why we know that's true is the disorder part. When there's an order, and we know that what it is that broke that, what caused the disorder, and it's sin, we now have a new story, one that we're living in. Genesis 3:6-7, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for the food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, who had been given the commandment not to, and he ate it. Then the eyes of the both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked and ran to Kmart. So, what did we start here? Here's where we started what you and I tend to do all the time, and this is the blame game. We want to find someone else at fault for everything, whether it's the government, whether it's whoever it is. We like to blame our spouse. It's always something else. It's even sin. And we play this game over and over and over. Yet at this point in time, when sin entered, this was a helper fail for Eve and a leadership fail for Adam. And so what was that? Man will struggle with and return to the earth. So work will now become a very different relationship with it. And woman will have pain in childbirth and struggle with man. Another translation says, her desire will be to rule over him. It's interesting to think about. If you think of, again, the order and what we see in our culture, that we actually have different roles and different callings, and it should be beautiful, yet we're trying to make it all the same. Everything's the same, and we're not. Praise Jesus, I'm not like my wife, and she's different than me, and vice versa, and all the way around, and my kids have their own personalities, and if you have more than 2 of the same sex, then you know, wow, they're so different, and how cool and beautiful that is. So one of the things that I spend my time doing and teaching to even college students and to parents a lot is sex ed is actually a key responsibility as a parent. I wrote this book, I Can't Say That, and it's literally a book for parents with a workbook that says, do you know what you believe? Walking through Scripture and giving you things to think about, but you've got to look at Scripture and decide, what do you believe about all these really hard topics? Why I want you prepared to be able to answer questions, because none of us are. There's so many things happening, especially just technology-wise, that catch us off guard, and they're 20 steps ahead of us. And my mom refused to learn how to turn the answering machine on or VCR or anything. It's like she was stuck back there, and to watch us, imagine how much has changed just in our lifetime with just technology. We can't keep up. What are some of the things we need to learn? We need to learn a basic human sexuality. How are we designed? How did God make you and make man and woman different but complementary, and then the role that plays? How do we become a confident parent? Or becoming a prophet, how? And the key to this is going to be us learning, education, growing in knowledge. And not everything out there in print is something that's good and trustworthy. So knowing who to trust, which actually I really struggle with. I wrestle with. I've got books on my shelf that I'm just like, I don't talk about them because I'm wrestling with, is this really true? Something doesn't seem right. And so I'll bring it up just kind of in passing, and I'm always testing with colleagues, like, is this something that's right or righteous? And others that are just clearly, thank you, Lord, for this tool or this video or this teaching. A theology of sex, the brain in sex, the brain in love, a theology of marriage. And that's a lot of where I start when counseling is, what's your belief about marriage, your theology of marriage? Why marriage? If we don't understand why, of course we can't defend it and explain it to our child who has a different view or worldview or is being challenged elsewhere with different views and worldviews. Because here's the point, and to me this is the scary part actually, is either I do or someone else does. So what I'm seeing when I go to people's homes, when I see clients, is parents that absolutely would do anything they can for their kids, but they've missed this because they've deferred elsewhere, even to the church, to teach on basic sexuality and ethics and morals and some of these key things. Like there's a really good book by Berenson on marijuana, a topic we don't talk about enough. And he explains, he's just a reporter, but saying, the book's called Tell Your Children. That's the title of the book. And it basically unpacks how the stuff we're talking about and selling in this world is not the stuff from yesteryear. And we have a spike in schizophrenia and psychotic breaks from what's going on and what's being sold today. And we have a problem, and we're not addressing it because the numbers of deaths aren't high enough. And it's like, well, we should point at alcohol. It's like, oh, we tried that, prohibition. I didn't think of deaths. But maybe we should even point the finger at sugar, maybe? There's a lot of things that we do that aren't good for us. We have to kind of think through. And so right here, right now, if you think of this, either I do or someone else does, I want us to be able to know what to talk about. I would set up a table, a booth. We homeschool our kids, and I'd go to these homeschool conferences, and I'd set up books, and I'd watch moms walk by me, because then they're carrying a little one, and they don't look at me for 5 seconds because of the topic. I'll deal with this when they're a teen. I'll deal with this when they're a teen. I'll have the talk later. And I want to just scream, it's almost too late. Be ahead of the curve. So what do we start at age 1, 2, 3 talking about and how critical that is? So then I'll speak or do something and all of a sudden I have a rush of freaking out. And it's like, that's kind of, I don't want you freaking out, but let's get prepared. So starting birth to 5. I called these in my book micro conversations with your child. Micro conversations. I realized when they're little, they might be micro conversations. As they get older, they're like probably more mini lectures. And I have to encourage parents, if you're talking to your kid and they're not responding, you're still planting seeds. Don't stop talking. Don't stop planting seeds. Don't stop sending little videos. Don't stop doing those things because they are listening. And then they're stewards of what they heard, and let the Holy Spirit work in them. But just because they're not responding, don't just be quiet. Don't stop having these conversations, talking about sexting, talking about hard stuff that we need to talk about. But little ones, starting there, birth to 5, it's rarely too early. When they're little, they feel innocent, seem like they could do no wrong in a sense until they start crying, and you I guess they look that way when they're asleep, but as they're getting older, they get more defiant. They get more that thing that I told my kids all the time: you do not have free will here. I hate that you have free will. And I'd say that phrase over and over. It's like, ugh. they do have free will, and God made them different. And how do we steward that? How do we nurture that? We need to start with basic anatomy. Call a penis a penis. But then this is the fun part. My wife, one time, my daughter stood up in the bathtub and she grabbed herself and she's like, my bottom hurts. I was like, that's not your bottom. And my wife's like, I don't know what to call it. It's like, it's called a vulva. The vagina's inside, the vulva's the outside. Call it what is why. And this is the important part. Language for when something goes wrong. We had lots of babysitters when our kids were little and we lived in Georgia. We had tons of babysitters, and they would sit in my classes. They were my students, and they'd hear me say it there. But when I got home, I would always ask my kids, hey, did they touch you? Did they do this? I go through this list of questions just kind of to see if anything happened. I wasn't looking for them to tell me the truth. Why? Because shame silences us, even when we're little. I was looking for a different rhythm in how they responded. As I got older, yeah, dad, whatever. I'm looking for that pause so that I can, okay, whoa, all right, got to deal with that. And that's how we need the language, so when they actually then start talking, I can actually say, hey, it hurts here. My daughter also stood up one day and was like, when am I going to get a penis? And it's like, yeah, honey, you're not a boy. This is where you have these little micro moments to teach and you move on. And that's important. So that's where correct body parts, the correct vocabulary is important. I don't know, a lot of us have euphemisms and words we like to use, and it's like my encouragement is to don't do that. Try to use, especially from little, the right ones, because it removes a lot of that confusion or embarrassment. Another one is be sure not to stereotype what is boy or girl, but emphasize that they are a boy and girl or a girl, like who they are. Haven't really said that much in the past and how important that seems to be right now, emphasizing. Why? Because we're all different. All the men in this room are different. We're not the same, and all the women are different. And how beautiful and wild that is. For me, I didn't feel like I made sense until I met my wife. It was confusing because everything around me was telling me something's wrong with me. I'm broken. And then I meet my wife, and all of a sudden things fit. Because our joke is that I'm the girl and she's the guy. I'm the emotional one. I'm the one that had the wedding planning stuff all together, and the colors and the flowers and all the stuff, and she hadn't even thought about a wedding. But now married 22 years, she's so the girl and I'm so the guy, and God is so good because you realize how we're all so different. And that she's the legal mind. She used to work in the legal field. She thinks her counseling approach would be a 2x4 across your head. Get over it. I'm like, that's why you don't do that, because I will deal with people and their stuff, and even our kids sometimes. It's like we're different and we're wired different, and how beautiful. But because I'm wired that way, I'm still will never know what it's like to be a woman. I've spent 25 years sitting in counseling with 90-something% female. I still couldn't explain women. They're all different. And I have my experiment of my one bride, my wife, and then a daughter, but even with men, same there. I'm not like them. And we act like there's a male and female, and almost, again, these two categories, if you will, there are, but there's such a beauty of spectrum of that. And what does that look like? As we explain this to our kids, we're not pigeonholing them into boxes, which is actually a good thing. And it's an experiment. And that they're loved by God and their family. We're emphasizing that you are ours. And as I've heard of so many of my students who are adopted, they get that extra ammo. They had you, they chose me. So if you're adopted, you get that extra little, because that's a beautiful thing, a beautiful way to push back at your siblings who are the bio kids, if you will. And that's just, I love that. Recognize that brothers and sisters, parents, friends, bodies are different. Emphasize some of that as they're birth to 5 here. We're just in the very beginning. We're having these conversations that they're noticing. And if you have a kid like my middle one, he's going to notice it out loud. He's going to, why are they in a wheelchair? Why? He's going to ask everything out loud. And yeah, so that's you have to be careful with that. But and talking about some of this stuff, you have to also rein it in a little bit. So when Blaze and I did Passport to Purity, we cut it short because he was still like, penis, just everything's funny. Okay, we went back and redid it later, but every kid's different. But here's what I've heard from a lot of parents. They tell me, my kid's not mature enough, my kid's not mature enough. They like to play with airsoft or Nerf guns. I'm like, so do I. They like to play Legos, so do I. They're not ready. And then they go, oh shoot, I totally missed the window. They're 18, they're leaving for college, and we haven't had any talks. Because the kid just showed a little bit of immaturity. I was like, I don't care. Start these conversations when they're in the single digits. And the next category is going to be the most important one coming up. But another one here, begin teaching about appropriate touch towards and from others, dignity and permission. Teach them this. Help them understand what is and isn't. Where are the boundaries? When they're in the birth to 5, a lot of times they're only in our home. But if they're at daycare, if they're at the nursery at the church, you're going to be educating them when they're around family, friends, other people, where they understand what those boundaries are and they have some language to that. This stage is marked by curiosity and exploration. That's what this stage is about. They're trying to discover the world. Miley still is so proud of that little dress where she was a flower girl in a wedding that she didn't even know who they were. They didn't have any family around, and she's cute, hey. But as they grow up, I don't have the audio for this right now, but it's going to play out of the back. She's sharing a verse. It's really cute. And then her AHG motto. What a cute experiment. One of the things we did when the kids were in this age, we had these books in their bookshelves, just mixed in the middle. And when questions would come up, they would pull it off the shelf and ask, or we would go grab one and have a conversation. So many times, especially at this age, this earlier age, what they were asking was not what we thought they were asking. We thought they were asking a bigger question. So we're trying to go into, and they're like, no, that's not it. Or as soon as you gave them the piece they wanted, they're off to go play Legos or something. You're gone. So being able to be ready for that you're just prepared to have some. But Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, great one. It's a very simple book written to say there are pictures you shouldn't look at, nudity, pornography, and there's some that are appropriate. So where's the boundary? Especially when they go to school later and they start, okay, let's look at these artists that painted, and what do you do with that? And so my favorite part of this book is I went outside one day and Blaze was standing on the front lawn and he was kind of rocking back and forth, and it's like, Blaze, what are you doing? He goes, Dad, my feeling brain says I want to go across the street to the park, and my thinking brain says I'll get in trouble. Here's your degree in neuroscience, dude. You just summed it up. That's it. You don't need any more. It's that simple. We have a thinking brain and a feeling brain. It's so simple. We're way more complicated, but yet that is so telling. You and I have this torn between these feelings and thinking. Yet I would even say my feelings are not the best data, often bad data, and my thinking isn't that trustworthy either. How do I ground myself? Which is where I've got to go somewhere. I've got to decide where that's going to be, and I hope you would say Scripture. But I'm grounding myself somewhere. Some TikToker, some influencer, some star that you look up to. It's kind of creepy where we go to find that foundation. But it matters. These other 4 books, the older ones were prettier. They had pictures on them. They weren't so boring, but these led to great conversations where where does a baby come from? We start the conversation, and then they didn't really. That's not what they were actually looking for. Or my favorites, when Miley all of a sudden sitting at the dinner table, the youngest, she's heard this talked about a million times with all of us, because that's our dinner table conversation, being married to a sex therapist and having a dad as a sex therapist, but all of a sudden she's at the table and she's like, penis, vagina, no. And we all bust out laughing. And she got it, and it's also not traumatic. Because I actually talk to so many young ladies who think they're dying because they started their period and they don't understand. They haven't had those conversations. And we actually this weekend had the American Heritage Girls that our daughter's a part of was at Canyon View as well, doing a service project, and actually had one of the girls start her period on the camp out and no mom. And they were like, it was amazing. All these girls were pulling out pads and stuff and taking care of her and just loving on her and just encouraging her. That's not normal, because all these things are an embarrassment. Like the families I talk to who there's a miscarriage in the family, we just don't talk about it. Versus no, grieve, hurt, celebrate, bring out around community, hold on to each other. There's so many areas we have such either embarrassment or it's just private. Now this next stage, this is to me the one where if you think of the talk, this would be it. But it's not where we're not even there yet. So many of us think the talk 13 plus. And I'm like, no. I want it done in single digits. It's just crazy to think about. Single digits. I want to prepare them for what's to come. Age appropriate, yes, we're not giving necessarily a lot of detail, but it's growing as they experience stuff. The schools in California about 6 years ago, so right before 2020, made a law that you had to teach all 15 genders in kindergarten. I don't know where they got 15 from, because Facebook, there's 90-something, so I guess they're not talking because they're also in California and they need to get on board with all the different genders that are out there. But 15. But here's the problem. Parents were freaking out going, what do I do? Because they have to have like 4 incomes to live down there, so you can't, it's harder to homeschool, and so you have to send them off, and they're at school, and then they say this. They say, I don't want to talk to them. They're not old enough. So they're not old enough for you to talk to them, but they are old enough for them to walk into kindergarten and that teacher, God help who it is, to teach them. No. You need to be the first. And what I'm seeing more anecdotally is the kids go somewhere, whether it's online or school, and they hear, and if it's new information, they go back to mom and dad and go, you're old school. You need to get up with the times. You need to catch up. But if they've heard at home and they hear over there, maybe they'll go to the principal's office because they laughed, and you can be proud of them. But they tend to grab onto what they hear first. It's interesting to think about. We want to plant seeds so that they're hearing at school these questions that defy what they know, and so they can look at it and go, yeah, right, no. We've got to be the ones to be on the front lines of that. So there's no such thing as the talk. We need to actually do these micro conversations, talking about these little things over and over. Your child now is entering that 6 years old. By the age of 7, they are pretty much who they are, which is wild to think about. Birth to 7 is some of the most pivotal season of a child's life and development. And here's one of the scariest parts of that story is for a lot of dads. When do dads tend to check in? Around 6 or 7, when they can throw a ball. Dads, be engaged from day one. Be engaged at all these stages. This birth to 7 shapes that child more than we can realize. And their personality is set pretty much in stone by 7. And here's the scary part. You pray for them to change that annoying behavior or that really dumb thing that you don't like about them. The way that we change after 7 is trauma. Bad things happen to us, even us now. It's crazy to think about what it takes to shake us up and to change us. And so by 7, we're just now entering kind of here's who they are. We want to start planting some really deep roots about some future decisions that they're going to make. So what does that look like? Here we need to go into a more descriptive anatomy. They need to get more detailed. We need to talk about their bodies and the difference. And they're going to notice other people. Talk about that. I remember being somewhere at a movie theater, and there was this young lady who was not dressed appropriately, in my opinion. My boys noticed, and they're like, okay, hold on to that. We're going to talk later. And Blaze, shut up. Like, rein him in. Gosh. And so we get into the car, and it's like, what's her story? Because one of the first things that I'm trying to do at this age is I'm trying to humanize her so he doesn't dehumanize her in his mind's eye or masturbating or whatever else. Over and over and over. The movement away from using to actually, you are a steward, young man. And at 7, 8, 9, I'm emphasizing that when you walk around the corner from me, you are in a different space, or to the other side of the room. You're no longer under my purview. You're your own person, and you have to steward that. We see that again online, where kids are right there in front of us online doing stuff they shouldn't, even in the same room. And it's like helping the weight of responsibility shift to them, and obviously us guiding. This is a stage to talk about the M word. Crazy to think about. 6, 7, 8. We need to be talking about masturbation. That you're going to encounter this and you're going to have to deal with this. And that they say 99% of boys do it, the other 1% are lying. So we need to deal with this conversation. The amount of women now that do this is normal. It's just a 60, 70% kind of a normal part of discovering myself. It's encouraged. What is a theology of? So actually I have a class that I teach, a theology of masturbation. We talk through the medical, we talk through all the different research, and then kind of what should we do? Where are the boundaries around this? And then we go, okay, so what does Scripture say? How does it inform? How does it guide us? And I have in the chapter in my book on this, I have a kind of a script I use with a lot of young men and women that I talk to about this, because this is an area of stewardship. Just like when you're dating, it's stewardship. Stewardship of our boundaries, but then it's funny, if I can't steward them now, I'm going to have a hard time stewarding them when I'm married too, potentially with other people. So I want to learn these boundaries here, because if we struggle with stewarding money, it's funny how that translates to us struggling 30, 40, 50 years later in the same area. So in the M word is the masturbation word has got to be talked about. And I know for many, we don't want to go there. We don't want to talk about it. Elephant in the room. Talk about it. Address it. Boys and girls alike. Here's the thing. Well, I don't want to talk to them before they've discovered it first. I want to, plant the seed. Welcome to humanity. It'll be figured out. So if you talk about it too early, they're going to be like, what? That's stupid. Okay, wait a little bit of time. It's kind of like with suicide. When someone brings up suicide, everything else stops. We need to deal with that. But the fear is, I don't want to ask questions because I don't want to actually almost help them make a plan. No, you're not that powerful. Let's talk through and let's address it head on. Everything else doesn't matter. We want to help them think. And the more we can think out loud, it moves stuff from the unconscious or non-conscious. So this part of my brain where I've got all this code written, when this, then this, and this, when this, and this, and this. I move it to my conscious, which engages that less developed prefrontal cortex at that age, but it still engages it. But there's something different about confession. Like one of my boys would I walk in the room and, actually Blaze, I walk in the room and he's alone and he goes, no, Dad, I'm not looking at porn. He knows I'm going to ask. He's in the room alone. It's kind of a conversation constantly and addressing these things. I lead a support group on Tuesday nights for LGBTQ parents. And we're in the year 4 right now. Horribly difficult, just heartbreaking. All these kids grew up in the church, went to Awana, all the kids, and these are all now, most all adult kids, a few teens, and have chopped body parts off on hormones, but have all cut off their family. You're dead to me because you won't bow to my every whim, if you will. And so it's really difficult. And so helping them think through what they missed. One of the key things is the access to online and what they're doing elsewhere. All this stuff we can't control out there, where they're at and what they're hearing elsewhere. Like with sexual identity. Most of us in this room, is my guess, is you at a certain point in time where you just went, boy, okay, and I just keep going as a boy. It wasn't not a dramatic, or girl, it wasn't a dramatic. For others, we wrestled. What does it mean? I don't understand. I don't quite fit that, and I'm pointing at different ways that this is lived out. It's much more of a wrestle, and others of us, I don't understand why I'm attracted this way? What does it mean? And actually what I say now is I really believe attraction is just bad data. I don't care who you're attracted to, because that doesn't sustain life in a marriage. It gets me into a conversation, that's about it. But me loving you, pursuing you, building into you, chasing after you, doing life with you, build something that's strong and healthy and beautiful. And the attraction part is maybe icing on the cake, but it's careful with that, especially when you're attracted to the same sex. We want to talk about that and plant that seed of understanding, because they're already hearing this in school. Friends, youth group, humans, this is getting talked about. Dignity and modesty, where are those boundaries? My daughter got a bag of clothes from a cousin, and my wife pulls out this little tiny sports bra, and she's like 3 or something. And my wife's first question, because she knows my opinion, she's like, under or over? Like, can she wear this by itself, or is this an undershirt? And I'm like, it goes under. And all of us, again, might make different rules with that, but it's how do you raise, for me, a daughter, I have a daughter, with dignity. That's a difficult one. What does it mean when you see others that aren't following your plan of what that is? That's not your problem. And for young men, stewarding that as well, their own hearts and their own eyes. But that's not for me to tell someone else what to do. I got to help them at this young age, their judgment of their friends. Helping them process and think through and talk out loud to you so that they're actually not harming others, if you will. Blaze, about this age, made a comment about some LGBT something, and a friend goes, well, I'm affirming, and he just broke into tears because he didn't know what to do. He's like, I didn't want to offend you. And I was around the corner listening, and it was handled so well. It was so beautiful to watch them disagree but actually be civil. They learn to not be civil as they get, I guess, our age. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. We need to talk about periods, wet dreams, preparing for this is normal, this is normal, this is normal, as their bodies are changing. What gender is, which is what? A made-up construct. There's boy and girl, male and female. Gender is now, it's been moved. That word used to mean just gender, sex, it was interchangeable. Gender now is a made-up construct of whatever we want to make it out to be. What's actually is interesting is if you go to the list on Facebook of 90-something genders, and you pick one and you ask 10 different people that say that's them, they would define it different. And that's okay, because that's actually very telling of all of us. We're trying to figure out who we are. These kids that are committing heinous murders, like the one that assassinated Charlie Kirk, the story there is, what do we have? We have an epidemic of very lonely and disconnected and identity-less boys. I don't know who I am. I want to belong. So something online grabs them, an ideology, and they run with it. Why? Because now I belong to something. I grew up in Chile, missionary kid, came to America at 17, and one of the first things I noticed was all these kids wearing black, like all black, to be different. I was like, but you all look all the same. And I remember thinking that, and missing my school in Chile, because in Chile we wore uniforms, we all looked the same, which also removed all class, removed all sorts of different differences when you had a uniform. It's interesting to think about that. This age, 6 to 10, we're talking further about sexual reproduction. Yes, it's penis, vagina. And actually, I get graphic with this on purpose. And I have to even now, probably more so than ever. And it's like, do you understand that every time a penis goes into a vagina, it is meant to make a baby? That's the design. Praise God, it doesn't. Married people out there, you'd have a lot of babies. It does, but it's meant to. We've disconnected that connection. It's all about fun and play. Yeah, it's fun, but it's meant to, meaning if I'm voting for that, I'm choosing that, I want to have sex with you, penis, vagina, I'm saying I'm okay with the consequences. And I need to see it that way, that clearly. but I'm welcoming the blessing of the consequence of that choice. We need to talk about this at this age because it shapes them as they get into the teen years and some of the other stuff. And what I said a minute ago too about personality is set in stone by age 7. So we're introducing some of this at this point. This is the age where we're talking about boyfriend, girlfriend. Are they dating? I hope not. Their friends might be, because we encourage it. Who's your boyfriend? Who's your girlfriend? We ask these dumb questions. When do you start dating? For our family, it's when you're a junior and senior in college. And more facetiously said, but it's like you don't need to be, when you can follow through with that commitment, then go for it. If you can't, it's lunacy, because your body wants to do more. And the funny thing is when we start dating, we start kissing, and it's like, great, I'm going to rev the engine up and then walk away. That's just rude and mean. So maybe kissing shouldn't be a part of some of this dance, even in dating, because it doesn't encourage us to keep chastity or keep boundaries. So we need to rethink a lot of this. So when do we start dating? When I can follow through. My oldest is in sophomore in college, dating, and it's like, please do not do this out of order. And I keep saying that to him over and over. It's like, marry her, please. And her parents are like, gotta finish college. I've had this conversation for 20-something years as a professor with other kids. Now it's mine. And I'm like, so what if he marries, he loses his full scholarship to college? I'm like, I don't care. You have a choice to make. Be aware of your choices. And if you choose to marry, you lose that because you chose wisely, in my opinion. But everyone else, we have different values. Like the girl's parents, they're going to see it different because so many times when you get married, she drops out of school. So I see that, the dilemma. But then we want to plant the seed at 6 to 10 of what is our family's ethos of dating, whatever that might be. Instead of they start pushing and pushing and pushing at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and it's hard conversations, it's mean conversations, it's you hate me conversations, it's a battle. And just as like FYI, even for us, our 3 experiments, this didn't go well with our oldest. High school was really rough because he was a good liar and he hid stuff, and this became an area that now he looks back on and he's like, thank you, Dad, for the boundary. Thank you, Dad, for the push. Thank you for having me and catching me. When at one point some girl sent him nudes and he freaked out, didn't know what to do. Luckily we saw something different. It only lasted like 2 days. My wife asked for the phone and he flinched, and I went after him. He gave it to me and we saw what was there, but you can't unsee that. That's great. And had to deal with that family and all that kind of stuff. It gets messy. We don't want to. We need to be the protector and then the build-upper of this young man, young woman. And this is a key season, 6 to 10. Being a friend. How do you recognize your friends? Hey, this one's sitting by themselves. Let's go sit over there with them. Instead of just being glad you're a part of the group and ignoring the one that's sitting over there. Being aware of others. None of this is natural for most of us. Pornography, the understanding what it is, and the conversation of it's everywhere, with screens everywhere. How do we actually protect our heads, protect our hearts? And why is there a draw there? What's the deal here? Why is it so damaging to the brain where we have now 20, 21, 22-year-old boys with erectile dysfunction? They can't get an erection and keep one because they're so saturated by video pornography. It's horrible. It's what's happening with so many young people. Or girls who think that's normal, so that they do stuff thinking that's what they're supposed to do or be. And I'm like, no, boundary. And they've never, really, I can say no? These are married women even. I can say no, I can have a boundary. Yes. And pornography has influenced so many. The biggest one I hear in my office is anal sex, which should have tattooed exit only. No self-respecting doctor would say that's actually healthy or good for the body. Yet that's on the table constantly, and all the stuff I read and look at, it's constantly pushed. Hey, married couples, try this. It'll spice up try this, push. Why? Because we have to accept same-sex marriage. We have to be okay with two men who love each other. I don't care what you feel. The body doesn't work that way, and that's a no by God's design, not out of being mean or mean-spirited. It's actually because I love you. Here we're talking about trauma and abuse. We're explaining that you, like for young men, you can be the problem or the solution. What kind of person are you going to be? And hey, if something happens to you, hey, let's create a space where we can talk. Here's the other failure, if you will, there is a lot of parents in the older years, especially the teen years, say, well, I've told my kids I'm safe. They can come to me with anything. And I'm like, great. They ain't gonna. Most, if you do have one that does, that's an anomaly. Like I have one that does. He's weird. The other ones are normal, where they are ashamed and it shuts them down. And so they don't want to. So here's the deal. If you think of the weight of this, they're dealing with a weight. I don't just go, hey, I'm here if you need me. I check in, and I check in again, and I check in and again, and I check in and again, and check in, and I check in, and I check in. Why? I love you. I'm going to pursue you. To where my more quiet one, my oldest, came home from his first semester of college, and the first thing he said is, I didn't look at porn one time, Dad. I'm like, good. My next question was, so what are you going to do over the break now that you have all this downtime? He's like, dang it. I was like, you got to prepare for that downtime. Just staying busy all the time works for a while till you crash, and then you want to build up the defenses for who you are, who you're going to be, and those times of weakness, if you will, or lack of busyness. They are under authority. This is that season we teach them that the police are here to protect you, and there are great ones and there are a handful of not so great ones. We reframe that. And the firefighters, how they honor people and teachers, other parents, and then how to have the wisdom of kind of knowing who to listen to, that they are under authority. And right now, you're under mine. And after a little while, you're not going to be in that sense. I'm going to be letting you go as you launch, which is a hard season, if you will. This is marked by experimentation and pushing boundaries. They're trying to figure out where are the boundaries. They need boundaries. They need parameters. And then the next season gets harder. One of the things that I did with my kids is Passport to Purity. It's no longer in print, which is sad. You can find them online, other places. I have so many friends of mine who did it, and it was like part of their trauma story. It was traumatic for them, kind of that purity culture. And so I've wondered what the difference is. And one of the difference I wonder is, it's just a bunch of audio speaking from Dennis and Barbara. And if you listen to that, do the little worksheets and do the little experiment, and that's it. It's meant to be rich conversations. It's meant to have so much more than that. It's meant to open up dialogue. And that's what we want. I've created one that it's on my website and all that kind of stuff that I'm still building out further. But to me, this is imperative that we prepare our kids and talk through. And this is my newer book, Going Beyond the Talk. It's to hand to your kid and say, here, read this, because I don't want to talk about this. And I have some families that use this as a devotional. So they sit as a family and go through the scripture and ask the questions at the end of each chapter, and they talk through these things that are not comfortable for the parent or the kid, but we need to make it normal so that we're preparing them. And as we head into this section, this age, this is where we're almost at the talk age, which is kind of interesting to think about. There's my oldest and his Eagle project. Blaze, back when he had really pretty hair, he cut it though. It's sad. Identity is so much more than sexual. We want to plant that seed of who they are. We want to talk about them being fearfully and wonderfully made. As a believer, your body is a temple. That every other sin you commit is outside your body, and there's something different with sexual. We need to actually talk through that. That you are not a mistake, you're not trapped in the wrong body, but you have a unique personality, and help figure out how to nurture that and hone that is really important. And understanding sexual reproduction. And so notice, like right now, what I've talked through already, I went through more detail, and now I'm going faster through this, because that's literally how it needs to be. We need to spend a lot more time on those earlier ones, so that now we're just kind of adding to what's already been talked about with our kids. Refraining from sexual immorality. Who are your idols? Who influences you? What is dating and courting? Further defined. What are those boundaries? We're kind of emphasizing that further. We're talking more about pornography again. This doesn't go away. And the amount of families where husband and or the wife as well are also dealing with this is too normal. Oh gosh, social media. This needs to go away. Our access to this before the age of 18 needs to be 0. We'll talk about that in a minute. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. More trauma, abuse, suicidal situations are coming from the access of social media when they shouldn't be able to access friends 24/7. We have, in a sense, we're part of that problem, if you will. This is marked by experimentation and identity. Who am I? We're asking questions like, how are you treating others? What does the Bible say? Not mom and dad or social media. Having the questions your answers come from the Bible. You're deepening your identity. Are you kind, respectful? What's your work ethic? We're talking about these letters. What does it mean? What's going on? Jesus, come back soon. Beware of decisions that cannot be unmade. Thinking beyond today and larger consequences further out. Maintaining integrity of your convictions and what God is saying. We're planting those seeds, but here's the scary part again. They have the free will. They have to be able to make these decisions on their own. One of the tools I've used over the last few years, and for Blaze and I, we're starting this soon. Alex and I did it a while back. There was a TV show that came out. A week after it came out, I asked one of my classes who had seen it. Over half the class had binge watched the whole thing already. Like, whoa. And so I'm like, okay, I got to check this out. So my son and I, oldest, we sat down and we watched this show together. It's 13 reasons why this girl kills herself. She left 13 cassette tapes back to those that had all knew part of the story of why she killed herself. It's very graphic. It's not okay. It's so well done, except a lot of language, which is a problem for me. Episode 12 has a rape scene in it, kind of right before she does kill herself. It's filmed very well, but it's heartbreaking. And then it shows you who actually knew that could have prevented this. It was actually the school counselor who didn't follow the protocol of his training. Then there's like season 2 and 3, and it just turns into a soap opera. But we've sat and watched an episode and then talked for an hour or two. Watched an episode, talk for an hour or two, and using these tools to have conversation. Now, the intent of the show was actually to help expose suicidality and the problems. It's actually had an uptick of suicides. My wondering as to why that is kids binge watching all this stuff by themselves. Lack of conversations, lack of engagement with us. And it's not always us, mom and dad. It's us, community. Like Blaze the other day had a question. He calls one of our pastors, hey, can I meet with you? And he went and met with him to ask a question. My older son, there was a certain youth leader, just a volunteer, that was his go-to person. When something happened, he'd go to their house. When he started being his leader, he was a single guy. Now he's married, and he goes to that guy's house, and he's knocking on the door at 2 a.m. I need to talk. And they're so gracious. And I tell him all the time, thank you so much for partnering with me to raise this crazy little punk. I'm so thankful for you. We need each other. That's why we do Boy Scouts. Our Boy Scout troop is all these dads I trust. And I get to invest in their sons, and they invest in mine, and how beautiful that is. We need that community around us of people. And so tools like this are hard, especially for some of us, because some of you would probably go like, I'd never watch this. That's my wife. She's like, never on this green earth would I watch that. It is hard. Music is another one. There's a lot of ways, because think about it. Some of us, just wondering maybe, put on a show for fun. And what seeds are we planting with that show if we don't talk about it? The fact that no one's married. The fact that the guy's always a buffoon. And the picture of marriage is always basically tainted. Like there's nothing good, holy, beautiful in that. If we're not talking about that, those are what's planting the seeds in our kids. So we need to talk about these things. A book that came out last year that was really, I think, pivotal. It's a research book. It's really nerdy, but let me give you just a few pieces from it. It was a book called Get Married. So you can probably guess the bent of the book of what they want you to do. And I didn't even know when I got it, Brad Wilcox, I didn't realize he was even a Christian, and it's actually a believer that wrote this. It's just full of research. But he said that if you get married, you accumulate much greater wealth than people who don't marry, more meaningful lives compared to their single and childless peers. A we before me approach to married life are happier and less divorce prone. And then forging a family first marriages, which look like, based off their study, frequent date nights, family fun time, and chores done with the kids, and they enjoy the happiest marriages. Part of what they found is every measurement of health that they could possibly do of humans, we are healthier married than not. Which is amazing that maybe something out there in the research points to a design and a designer. But it also means if we're single, we got some work to do. As in, if we don't have the community around us, that's some of the darkest times of my life. I got married late 20s, which I can see God's hand and why and all those pieces, but because all the schooling I got to get done before I met Kelly, and so many other just growing up stuff. But that was probably the darkest time when I didn't have people. A time when I was in the hospital, first time with all my Crohn's stuff started, and the only person there was one of my non-Christian coworkers. And I realized, wow, I did not have people around me. I did not have community. And it was because I had been engaged before, and when I met this other girl, I just cut myself off from everyone that were friends because they were mostly female, and I thought that was the right thing to do, and I didn't have community. It's like, no, when you marry, yes, my relationship with other women has to change, but it's not all or nothing. And so being able to figure out that boundary was hard at that season. One of my favorite pastors, he says it this way, Vodi Bakum. He says, I raised my sons to be husbands and fathers, and my daughters to be wives and mothers. He's like, they may not all end up being fathers and mothers and wives and sons. Like they may not be that. It's like, but I'm preparing them in that direction instead of the one that most of us, if we're not careful, are. And that's, do you have a good job? Do you have insurance? Get married? Go to college? Like all that stuff will sort itself out. Let's actually aim for the kind of person you're going to be. And one of those key areas is the kind of man, husband, father, woman, wife, mother you're going to be. And if God doesn't open that door, we'll deal with that. That's a tough one. And we have dear friends that Kelly went to college with that everything in them wants to marry, and they're in their 40s and God's not opened that door. We don't understand. Others of us have been through stuff where I thought I met the love of my life and now it's all exploded and I'm in a mess now. Yeah, that's not how it's meant to be, but God is still God. And how do I hang on to that, even when I'm dealing with co-parenting or a very difficult situation? Because this is the world that we live in is this one. It's changed. And we're sometimes the worst. I made a new rule in my classes last year that just made the year night and day different. No phones, no laptops, no iPads, nothing. And all of a sudden there's engagement, there's actually eyeballs that I see. They're not doing homework for other classes or mine in the room. It was this is so amazing. And if the schools can do that, like the public schools can make the rules that they're starting to make, why can't we? We need to have a higher standard with some of the relationship with technology. But a lot of that's going to start with us, because we're the problems as examples. When they walk in the room and we're scrolling, when we're lost, when we're killing time, literally murdering it, kind of how we relate. Why do we know this? Let me kind of give you just a little bit of history to this that then kind of leads us to today. 2019, this book came out, The Coddling of the American Mind. Not a Christian book, but very, very helpful, let's just say. Lots of solid stuff. Talks about 3 bad ideas: avoiding adversity at all costs, always trusting your emotions, and the world's black and white. And he basically said our kids are anti-fragile. Talked about the whatever that dome thing is in Arizona where they built this ecosystem inside. They said they kept, I think it was twice they tried to do it, and after a few weeks, the trees all fell over. It's like, why? Trees don't grow roots unless they're stressed by wind. What do our kids need? Exactly that. They need stuff happening that actually strengthens them, that actually digs deeper roots. In us being these, it's no longer overprotective parents or helicopter parents. It's no longer lawnmower parents, if you've heard of that term. It's now therapeutic parenting. Now I'm going to tell you something hard, dear. And we all like wrap it in bubble wrap. No, that's not helpful for kids or for us. And so this idea planted a seed in the researcher. So the second one, Jonathan Haidt, very nerdy, looking at from a researcher side. He's like, I knew back then there was a problem, but I wasn't ready because the data didn't say it enough. It's like, oh gosh, how many lives could we have saved if he had? But this world we came from that. He's written some stuff I'll show you in a minute since then. Another one I recommend, the 2020 Social Dilemma Netflix special. You hear conversations from these tech people that are like, I was so excited that I created the like button, and I cannot believe how many monsters I created. And most of them, none of their kids have access to this technology, and most of us do. It's really enlightening, very, very eye-opening. Another one, though, is Childhood 2.0, 2021. It's on YouTube. This one actually interviews some parents, and they go, okay, today, 2021, what's the most dangerous thing for your kids? And they're like, anything out there. As in, the world is scary, dangerous. And then they go, actually, we're probably in the safest time ever in history. The most dangerous thing is that cable connected to your house and what's going on online. And then goes through just thing after thing after thing of what we're seeing happen in living rooms, in houses, in bedrooms, in our house, among good Christian families where kids are being snatched away because we don't have a clue. So we need the online influences, we need to know who's influencing them, having conversations about who's influencing them. What kind of things are they learning? This is really hard, especially if we don't care. Like if we don't like the topic that they're learning about, this is really difficult. So here are some of the things that are the key things that are stunting or actually preventing growth with our kids. Again, we're seeing this with the adolescents especially. Number one, or the top one kind of that we tend to, if I were to ask you guys, it'd be porn. Porn is changing our world. Too easy to get to. I call these lovely things, whatever mine is. If you love your child a lot, you give them one of these, right? And like, this is a porn portal. You just literally gave them access to everything. Why? Because I can go where? I can open Safari and I can type in PORN. Let's see what the internet on this church goes. Kidding. My first option is Pornhub. Second one is X videos. If I click on images or videos or click on a link, my life is never the same. That's how close. My wife always loves it when I do this here because she can see that. This is a porn portal. That's what it is. And, oh, well, I have Safari turned off. Yeah, they found a way to go through another app because other apps have browsers themselves. And yeah, I've learned a lot from my experiments at home. This is a big deal. It has to be addressed. We cannot not deal with it. Excessive video game play is the second one. Video games are great. We actually have an Xbox room with multiple screens. We like techie stuff. I love techie stuff. It's what they're doing online and who they're doing it with, and the conversations being had, and the other stuff online that's happening that's changing everything. Or I'm wearing diapers so I can keep playing a game and it's just never ending, and I choose that over real people. I stay inside, I live inside, I'm lost basically to the world, which is really scary. But a third really key influence is absent fathers. These are the three kind of main ones. Dads that are there but not there, or dads that are absolutely not there. They're not in the picture. So actually having other men in their life. I loved when, especially with Cub Scouts, we had a lot of single parents that would get involved. And I was like, I thank you for your son being involved, and you're not invited because it's dads only. And it was amazing to be able to mentor these boys and see where they're at now and how pivotal the community is for this. The impact of fathers is so, so critical. Few others, though: irresponsibility, being skillless. That father that created a video channel of just how to fix certain things. Hey, here's things your dad didn't teach you. It's amazing. But there's so many things like that. My son yesterday at our Eagle project was helping a dad cut something. We were building these shotgun stations, and he was over there helping, and this dad was telling me, he goes, all the other boys helped, but they would just kind of stand there and only do what they were told. They were kind of like, and they were near saws. Your son was moving stuff and grabbing stuff, and he was helpful. I was like, yeah, he's changed alternators, he's changed radiators, he's changed water pumps. We have a house built in 1905. He's done stuff. It's like that changes their confidence. That's such a critical piece that I can at least YouTube it, but I can try, and that's a really important one. And then social media. This is changing our kids. These are seriously impacting our families. But I want to turn a corner here and go into a harder one that's affecting possibly some of us. So after all the stuff we've talked about, and I kind of put it here on purpose, I want to talk about this, I guess, thinking, if you will. And then this is a book that actually that started challenging the conversation. When Miriam Grossman actually published this book, she goes, this may be the end of my career by publishing this book. She goes, but I'm in my 70s, so bring it. And it's called Lost in Transnation. An absolute expose, 2023. So fast forward now a few years, a lot's happened. And a lot of what she exposed is still happening today, stronger than ever, especially in Oregon, which I'll talk about that in a minute. But why is this important to talk about again? Is if you don't, someone else will. What's happening? A big one is our schools. Teachers making the claim that if you are not 100% affirming, that they are the parent's child now. The overstepping of boundaries when it comes to parent-child, the inserting and the breaking of parent-child relationship. We know with every piece of research, the most important person in a child's success is that parent-child bond. Now, does everyone have that? No. Are some kids in some horrific situations? Yes. Some are in some terrifying, and we need to treat those different and deal with that. But what's happening now is this inserting of that I'm now the child's parent. And she goes through stories of kids that have been taken out of homes and actually just further and further abuse from that. Another scary one, though, is counselors. The reality today is, can your local counselors be trusted to come from a biblical worldview? And I would say, careful who you pick. A lot of Christian counselors in Oregon are just too afraid to lose their license, and so they're not standing strong against this. They're kind of whatever you need or want because I just don't want to lose my license. That's not okay. There's some key court cases right now in multiple states, Washington and Colorado, that are fighting, how dare you regulate what I say in a counseling office. We'll see where they go, but they haven't been finished. They haven't been taken care of yet, so we'll see. But this is a big deal. Trust who you trust. And so many people now, we just go to whoever our insurance covers. So good luck with that. That's not going well. I'm dealing with too many messes from that. The history here of the gender identity, this is not a new thing. Many of us think it is. It's not. This is from the 1950s, from John Money and Alfred Kinsey. And John Money literally took two boys had a botched circumcision and said, well, let's raise her as a girl and let's just experiment. And then purported that it went great, and then that's what we follow, because they just ignore the rest of the story, where basically both of the boys die, one of overdose and one of suicide, later as they started finding out what was done to them and what this doctor had been doing to them during visits, molesting them. It is a disgusting, yet he is the God of all this. John Money, a sick individual, and Alfred Kinsey even more so. A twisted pervert that used kids and used sex offenders to gather research. Hey, when you go get out of jail and you keep molesting kids, keep sending me data on what you discover, is literally what these people, and that's what's shaping our culture. It shows how it can be one person that changes this history, which obviously we hope with what happened 11 days ago, that we're in a new era. I hope so. I spent the afternoon in tears watching the memorial, and that didn't help preparing for tonight. I was just exhausted from, especially his wife's speech. Blaze and I both were standing there crying, and it's like, oh gosh, this is crazy, painful. But here's where it got messier, worse. The Castro consensus. What does it mean? You do it my way or else. So what happened since the 50s was every single organization, the pediatric, the medical, the American Psychological, every one of them got infiltrated slowly and carefully and tactfully. This was not done. This was a long game, and it has changed society. And the doctors I know and the doctors I talk to, a lot of them are like, I'm just trying to stay alive. They're not paying attention to all this. I'm just doing what I'm told. So a lot of that. And then there's also those that are actually intentionally doing harm. But this is a really scary change that we have to pay attention to. Now, the part that rocked me from her book was one that she said, here's the line to draw. And I looked at our society, Christian society, and I was like, wow, we don't draw that line. This is actually the one that we allow, thinking it's the safest one. And what she found was the harmless allowance of social transitioning is the gateway drug onto the assembly line. We need to say no. That 90-something% of kids that once they socially transition, they're on that now, that pathway, and you just lost them at that point. If they're not allowed to do that, 96%, and I've heard between 85 and 96, of kind of that range, of kids who are struggling, it resolves itself with puberty. If we just left the kids alone, that sounds like a familiar phrase, we wouldn't have this problem for the most part. Like how big of a deal that is. This became a very tactful, a multi-billion-dollar industry. And that's a problem. We're allowing, so many Christian families I know are allowing their kid to go to school dressed as what they'll never be, and that becomes the gateway drug. They don't all go to surgeries, but so many go to the hormones and the surgical castration and stuff so that's good. They're not all doing the surgeries. But here's also just a caveat. If you or myself or my kid chopped my body up and took drugs galore to my own detriment, but I die and I confess Jesus, we need to be careful that we need to make sure we're playing the long game. We just want to have a nice Christmas. And I'm like, no, if you have the next 50 that are miserable and they actually do come to repentance and couldn't know Jesus, we want them with us in heaven. So stop fighting for a good holiday. Let's play the long game. And to me, that changes what we do. Because a lot of what we do is just try to be nice and keep the peace, which doesn't change anyone, by the way, versus saying no. Because what's happening here is this new word, this was new one to me, iatrogenic persistence. What is that? Induced unintentionally by a physician or surgeon, I create a lifelong patient. As in, when I take your penis and turn it inside out and make it into a hole, that's what it is, it's actually an open wound. So your body spends the rest of your existence fighting to close that wound. and you use these little plastic things and you stick them in there over and over, just fighting it to stay open. And that's what we call a faux vagina. No. No, 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 no. Not okay that we're doing this. This is a scary one too. Rehoming your child is a possibility. It's happening here in Salem. It's happening in this area. Parents that have lost their children because the state has said, you are not affirming enough, and we are putting this kid here. And that's happening more and more in red and blue states across the country. There's a fight against it, obviously, but we're still not done with this. This erosion again of the parent-child bond. The part that I focus on, like in my counseling, is this one. Usually when I see this going on with families, the marriage is hanging on by a thread. Protect, protect, protect your marriage. Because that's what Satan wants. He got you over here, and now he wants to break that marriage up, and he wants to see devastation. And no, you don't handle it different. No, you're not the same. Good. We're not supposed to be the same, but I need to be your biggest supporter and partner with you and actually be a teammate, even though we might disagree. That's a really tough one. There's books like this, Secrets of Sex and Marriage by one of my mentors, Michael Seitzma. Really great tool, great resource, evidence-based research, just a really good one. Oh, yay, that picture, love that. And then the language hijack. These are called euphemisms. There's no 0% regret rate. That's called, we don't keep data so we can tell you that there are 0%. That's what they've done. There is no such thing as top surgery. It's called a double mastectomy. And she gets quite feisty about it because she's like, I've had a mastectomy. It's called cancer. Like, this is heinous what we're actually validating. The joy of binding, where you wrap yourself and compress the breast tissue, which actually then makes the breast tissue break down and not develop. No, 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 no. And they can get these online. They can get them for free at school. We need to understand what this is and talk about it. And then the faux vagina or penis is, no, it's a wound that actually your body fights to heal, because that's not. And if you think of, for men, if you put high estrogen, or for women, high testosterone, your body literally flips a lid, freaks out, and fights and fights and fights and fights, because it knows something foreign is here. I'm not that, which we just didn't add more and more medications. And then to top all that off, trans is old, so now the new low is the new, which is what, a eunuch. Men who go in and go, I want to be nothing. So just remove everything surgically. And the doctors are like, okay, here's the bill. We're a mess. And that's what all this points to, is we're a mess. Now the one highlight, the one good, was this one. The suicide data that's often quoted is a myth. They looked at Sweden, who had a database from socialized medicine, so it's everyone. And they looked at all those kids that didn't get the surgeries, that had to now, and they've got to now, and they had to wait. And they showed that there was a 0% suicide rate. 0. Yet what's told often is, do you want a dead daughter or a live son? And the parent obviously freaks out, because I'm trusting you. And so the manipulation is horrendous, because I don't know about you, I would do anything for my kids. And if this professional told me that, I would do anything to fight. So if it means some crazy surgery, okay. So parents are doing a lot because they think they're doing the right thing, because it's being abused. What is all this? 2 words, 2 phrases that were fought about in the literature, and they're very much true: rapid onset gender dysphoria and the social contagion. What are those? This used to be, the trans thing used to be men who wanted to have boobs. That's what it used to be. Men that had issues, an anomaly. And all of a sudden there's this uptick of young ladies like we've never seen before. And the influence from TikTok, from social media, from Discord, from online groups, from this rising up, social contagion and the rapid onset. All of a sudden you got all these girls that are actually going, I don't want to be a girl anymore. They look at society and they go, I want to be, the boy has this, the boy has these privileges, and they fight for that, which is really sad. On her website, she actually has a thing where you can actually download a parent notice to schools. You can use this to fight back with schools. That's more foreign to me because we've homeschooled our kids. Now, right after this, another book came out, another secular book. So notice this last few have been secular. To me, that's interesting. I'm having a hard time finding some Christians, especially in this season, 21 to 24, that were standing up strong against. This is a group of 3 ladies, one in Ireland, 2 American counselors, and they wrote this book, When Kids Say They're Trans. They found that parents who have successfully helped their children navigate gender distress without resorting to surgery and hormones have done so by authoritatively taking the reins. What an idea. What an idea. Not waiting on a doctor, not trusting a therapist. That's a big deal. That we actually have to insulate them against the messages that their sex will or should determine their interest. And then this is another interesting concept. It takes about 8 years for kids to understand gender constancy. So if we actually were listening to the data, if you had a struggle, we'd say, all right, I'll check with you in 8 years. And we know from the data that in 8 years, you're going to be telling a very different story. What I worry has happened in American Christian especially is now parents are so glad their son is just gay or lesbian. At least they're not trans. As in Satan just gained some ground. Because no, it's not okay. Now, I might be bent that way, wired that way, attracted that way, great, but I still, as a believer, die to myself and follow Scripture, whatever that looks like, whether it's marrying someone of the opposite sex, whether it's staying single and celibate. But we need to know what we're standing on, which is really important. And these secular authors continue to say watchful waiting. They actually say these things that make complete sense. And they also say social transitioning. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. The mental health of young people who have transitioned tends to get worse instead of better. We don't have the data in America yet. Supposedly from other countries, it's about a 7-year cliff. Do all the physical changes, 7 years later, things plummet. We're not there yet. That's what's scary. What's coming, the hurt for some of these kids is coming. And we need to be prepared to pick them up, to hold them, to protect them, to just hold them together through a really difficult awareness of I made a big, big mistake. It says that you, the parent, may be more effective at helping your child through this experience yourself rather than going to a therapist. Absolutely, absolutely. Be careful with therapists. Be careful with doctors. Be careful with that. And it's sad to say that. So you have to almost interview them. For my practice, my counseling practice, I've been in practice for 25 years. I do a pre-interview every time. I'm going to lay out very clearly who I am, where I'm at. I don't want you guessing. And it's wild, some of the non-Christians are like, sure, okay. And I'm like telling them the same thing. Get married. All these things. It's like, you're not going to get a different me. This is it. Because to me, it's more discipleship. I'm leading you in a direction, not just here for you to pay me to make you happy. Because that's where a lot of that industry has gone in some ways. And then they say, parents, maybe make a concerted effort to place boundaries around your child's online engagement. The access to online we're seeing a huge, huge, huge problem. It's our job to help our children orient and adapt to reality, to inoculate against harmful beliefs that their body is wrong. How we talk about this really matters. And then they go through explaining what the rapid onset gender dysphoria is. And for those that are interested in more, like there's so much more out there. There was a documentary, D-Trans. This is the world I get to live in. It's tough. It's so heartbreaking. Just some of what people have gone through and the detransitioners and the pain, the horror. And here's kind of the part I want you to hang on to with that. And I just kind of want to lay it out there for you to think about. one of the themes I'm hearing from detransitioners is one of two stories. My mom and dad were my biggest fans for all this delusion. Now I realize I'm wrong and they're dead to me now. I cannot believe they went along with my crazy stuff. Or my parents stood firm on truth and I hated them for it. And I'm so thankful they stood for truth and they're my best friends now. Which story do you want? Because I see a lot of Christians pushing the other one. And I'm like, no, stand on truth. There's this book even, the stories, I don't recommend it. It's hard to read. But out there, so many saying, I did this and it destroyed my life. It destroyed my future. So many that will never have children or have different voices, or their body is definitely a mess. Give you another, got way too much to go through that I want to get through tonight. Another one that really was important that came out 2024, just kind of going on that timeline, was this book called Bad Therapy, exposing what we're doing to harm children in therapy and families. She actually, Abigail Schreier, another secular, by the way, researcher or journalist, goes back into the iatrogenous stuff, and here's her, just the titles of her chapters. We spend so much time meddling with kids, actually checking in all the time. Are you okay? Are you okay? And they're like, no, I'm not. I'm not again today. And I'm not. We're creating all the anxiety and all the drama with kids these days and teens. Society, teachers, counselors, sometimes even parents, definitely online. We survey them to death. We actually use trauma as a badge of honor now. It's an excuse almost. And then therapeutic parenting. And here's what she kind of concludes with. Maybe there's nothing wrong with our kids. This will be our final session. What if taking the risk is the only way to feel ready? And then she says, what if the solution to adolescent mental health problems is to outgrow adolescence? What a concept. Again, none of this is really new for us, but it's like we need to remind ourselves, which is like in my home, my kids are expected to have a job by 14 or 15. It changes who they are. My daughter, who's just turned 15, is so excited because she's working at the Dairy Queen in West Salem, and she is so excited. She's been fighting for it to follow her brothers for years, and I'm so proud of her. It's also scary too, letting them go in that sense. The boys have worked farm jobs to also see, hey, that's hard, maybe go to college. And my oldest loves it, so yeah. And then that same year, this is the book I referred to earlier, this book came out, The Anxious Generation. Summarizing the book is basically we've got play-based childhood versus a phone-based. We've changed the world. He goes through chart after chart showing how the increase of problems with our kids didn't start with 2020 COVID. That was kind of one of the big revelations from his book, is that it started in 2012. What was 2012? It was when Instagram was bought by Facebook. That's the pivotal season. The exposure to comparison, for girls especially. And we're losing our girls with comparison and online, so social media, losing our boys to porn and to excessive video game play. To the extent of anxiety is going up, self-harm is going up for girls, suicide is going up. Now boys are more successful at it. Girls try it more. They're just less successful. And then his conclusion for his whole book were these 4 things, and it's literally changed our world in the last year in really good ways. Again, a secular researcher who does not believe in Jesus, and when he's interviewed on conservative shows, it's hilarious because they're like, so your book actually says that kids are healthier in conservative homes versus liberal. How does that change your mind? And he's like, It's so weird. He's so smart, but doesn't quite get his heart that maybe something he believes is even wrong with his own experiments at home. No smartphones before high school. He even says later, if possible, no social media before 16, actually preferably 18. No phones in schools, absolutely. And get them outside. Go play, go do something physical, be active, and how important that is. And it changes everything. this was me. So I grew up in Temuco, Chile. And why this becomes really important for me, I'm just going to show you this and then let you laugh your heads off, I guess. I don't know. But this is me in 1992. My wife has changed my wardrobe a little bit, but everything I owned was purple and pink and colorful and just crazy, and that was me. My second motorcycle after that one was, I painted it teal because it was pretty, and oh gosh, I had issues. At one point I had glasses that were tinted purple just because I thought they were pretty and just didn't understand what message I was sending people. I had no idea. I was so clueless. And then a missionary from Dominican Republic, where I was on a mission trip there, and she goes, Corey, you grew up in Chile and stood out like a sore thumb as a white redhead your whole life. Now you're nobody. You're in America and you're no one. You're doing everything you can to try to stand out. I'm like, I think she's right. Same struggle. Who am I? Trying to figure myself out. Then this turned into me now. And then I had to put better pipes on it, so they're louder. Because Romans 1 says, therefore God gave them over, scary passage, and the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. Because of this, God gave them over, and that should scare all of us. In verse 32, although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but they also approve of those who practice them. May that not be us. We need to stand on truth. We need to stand on a biblical lens that we're using, and that means study. That means more study. That means further intentionality there. A verse that came to mind just even today, just thinking about what we're going through kind of in our world and society, was this one. 2 Timothy 4, preach the word, be prepared, whether the time is favorable or not. Patiently correct, rebuke, and encourage your people with good teaching. Even though people say, don't judge, don't judge, don't judge. No. If you're a believer, we have some talking to do. Some responsibility, and that needs to be brought back in and gently, carefully. For a time is coming when people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching. That sounds familiar. They will follow their own desires and will look for teachers who will tell them whatever their itching ears want to hear. They will reject the truth and chase after myths. But you should keep a clear mind in every situation. Don't be afraid of suffering for the Lord. Work at telling others the good news and fully carry out the ministry God has given you. Be someone like Charlie Kirk that did that, whether you knew him well or not. Ephesians 4, then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. Because there's things you and I believe, I promise, that's not true. And we need to take it back to Scripture and test it because it's filtered in, it sounded good, and it was not true. Instead, we speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. And I hope, like even today, I hope with the content of this and kind of laying this out, I know it hits sometimes very personal. Things I made mistakes on, things that I wish I had done different or better. One of the things that is so amazing is this, and this is another one of those quotes from Vodi Bakum. He says, it's never too late to rescue a kid. He goes, let me give you 4 words that explains why. He goes, United States Marine Corps. He goes, no, I don't mean join, which actually his son just did, one of his sons. He said, if they can take an 18-year-old unruly, ungodly, psycho kid and turn them into an order-obeying, rule-following soldier without the gospel, how much more so can we? The problem is I don't know if we're willing to fight that hard. As in, sometimes I think it's worth almost changing everything to go after and rescue some of our kids. And we're not willing to. We let them all right, I guess I did my best. And we need to come together in prayer and surrounding to chase after some of our kids that are not okay. And that's, to me, that's the body of Christ. That's you guys, that's your church, that's the community, that's the family that you're building. That I know I would not be here today without my wife, that one partner. I honestly believe I'd be dead today because she's been so faithful through my health stuff. But way bigger than that, the community we've built, in the different places we live, our family, just doing life together, how critical it is to do it not alone. Because so many of us are taught that if you're struggling, suck it up, go quiet, hide it, don't share. They might judge. No. The stuff I've even shared today, like even about myself, like, hey, I'm here even in Salem. I'm here. We're here to actually love you, to help support you, to encourage you, to have more of these conversations if need be, to equip. Where's that last thing? Gotta load. Yeah, the phrase that I've had up there a few times, either I do or someone else does. Please be someone that stays ahead of that curve, has those conversations, that maybe you're the one like my kids' leaders who's actually influencing my kids. And I'm thankful for their ministry by volunteering at Awana or volunteering at youth group or volunteering at something. That's the body of Christ that we want to be building and equipping and building into.